Imagine this. You are standing in a room divided by an invisible, impenetrable glass wall. On one side, there is a group of people who seem to glide through life. Opportunities stick to them like magnets. Their bank accounts grow with the rhythm of the tides, and their health radiates a vibrant, enviable energy. On the other side of the glass, the atmosphere is heavy with quiet desperation. People are running on a treadmill that never stops, sweating, striving, and exhausting themselves, yet never moving forward an inch. They are good people, hard-working people, yet they are trapped in a cycle of scarcity that feels like a curse. You look back and forth, trying to find the difference. Is it intelligence? No. There are geniuses on the starving side. Is it luck? No. Luck is too fickle to explain such consistent disparity. Is it inheritance? No. Many on the wealthy side started with nothing but the clothes on their backs. The mystery of this divide haunted Tom Corley, a certified public accountant and financial planner, who spent years staring at the financial ledgers of the wealthy and the poor. He realized that the numbers on the balance sheet were merely the smoke. The fire lay somewhere else. The fire lay in the hidden, subconscious software running in the background of their minds every single second of every single day. This software is called habit. And the sensational discovery of Corley's 5-year study of 233 self-made millionaires and 128 struggling individuals is that the glass wall is not made of circumstance, but of daily choices. Change your habits. Change your life is not just a title, it is a promise that the wall can be shattered. The narrative begins with Corley's journey into the microscopic details of the day. He did not look at the big stock trades or the real estate deals, he looked at the alarm clocks. He looked at the breakfast tables. He looked at the car rides. He discovered that the divergence between the rich and the poor starts the moment consciousness returns in the morning. The study revealed a startling statistic. Nearly 50% of self-made millionaires wake up at least 3 hours before their workday actually begins. This is not about insomnia, it is about the victory of the first battle. The narrative invites us to witness the morning of the archetype we shall call the future millionaire. While the world is still draped in darkness, while the struggling worker is deep in the paralysis of the snooze button, delaying reality for just 9 more minutes, the future millionaire is already awake. They have claimed the silence. In this solitude, they are not rushing, they are investing. They are engaging in what Corley calls the 20-minute rule. They spend 20 minutes learning, 20 minutes exercising, or 20 minutes planning. By the time the sun rises and the chaos of the world begins, the emails, the traffic, the demands of the boss, the millionaire has already scored 3 victories. They enter the battlefield of the day with momentum. Contrast this with the archetype of the struggling worker. The alarm screams. They wake up in a cortisol-spiked panic. They are already late. They skip breakfast or grab something processed and sugary. They rush to work. Their minds scattered, reactive, and defensive. They have surrendered control of their day before it even began. The analysis of this morning ritual reveals the concept of reverse engineering control. The rich understand that they cannot control the economy, the weather, or the traffic, but they can control the first 3 hours of their day. This pay yourself first mentality applies to time just as much as it applies to money. By securing the morning, they secure their mental state. They are proactive pilots, whereas the poor are reactive passengers. The narrative then moves from the bedroom to the library, or rather, the lack thereof. Corley's research unearthed a statistic that acts as a dividing line in the sand. 88% of the wealthy read for at least 30 minutes every day for self-education or self-improvement. Compare this to the struggling group, where only 2% engage in similar reading. The story takes us inside the mind of the wealthy. They do not read for entertainment, they read for survival. They devour biographies of successful people, technical manuals, history books, and personal development guides. They are knowledge hunters. They understand a fundamental law of the universe. Your income can only grow to the extent that you do. The narrative paints the wealthy not as hoarders of money, but as hoarders of information. They see knowledge as the raw material from which wealth is forged. Conversely, the narrative observes the leisure time of the struggling group. What are they doing if they are not reading? They are watching television. The study showed that 67% of the wealthy watch less than 1 hour of TV a day, while 77% of the poor watch more than an hour. This is the opium of the average. The screen provides a temporary escape from the stress of poverty, a numbing agent that distracts the mind from its own potential. The struggling worker uses the screen to turn off their brain after a hard day. The future millionaire uses the book to turn on their brain. The analysis here is brutal but necessary. The difference between a life of abundance and a life of scarcity is often the difference between the entertainment mindset and the education mindset. One seeks distraction, the other seeks traction. But the cultivation of the mind is only half the battle. The narrative shifts to the vessel that carries the mind, the body. Corley discovered that 76% of the wealthy exercise aerobically for at least 30 minutes a day. 4 days a week. We see the archetype of the wealthy individual sweating on a treadmill, running in a park, or cycling. This is not an act of vanity. They are not trying to be cover models. They are trying to be high-performance machines. The narrative explains the biological alchemy at play. Aerobic exercise floods the brain with oxygen and increases the production of glucose, the fuel of the mind. It stimulates neurogenesis, the growth of new brain cells. The wealthy understand that health is the first wealth. If they are tired, sluggish, or sick, they cannot spot opportunities, they cannot negotiate deals, and they cannot lead teams. On the flip side, the narrative observes the physical state of the struggling group, often exhausted by physical labor or mentally drained by stress. They view exercise as a luxury they cannot afford, or a torture they wish to avoid. They fall into the trap of false energy, sugar, caffeine, and processed foods that give a quick spike followed by a crash. This physical lethargy translates into mental lethargy. It creates a fog in which opportunities are missed and motivation dies. The lesson analyzed here is that success is an endurance sport. The fast lane requires a vehicle that is tuned for speed. The wealthy treat their bodies like Ferraris, the poor treat their bodies like rental cars. As the narrative weaves through the daily routines, it encounters the phenomenon of goal setting. But this is not the vague, New Year's resolution style of goal setting. This is a scientific, almost military operation. Corley found that 62% of the wealthy focus on their goals every single day, compared to only 6% of the poor. The narrative introduces the concept of dream setting. This is a unique process where the individual scripts their ideal future life, 10, 15, 20 years from now. They write it down in vivid detail: the house they live in, the work they do, the money they earn, the charities they support. But they don't stop at the dream. They work backward. They break the dream down into goals. They break the goals down into monthly targets. They break the targets down into daily tasks. The struggling worker, by contrast, operates in a state of wishful thinking. They buy a lottery ticket and wish for millions. They look at a luxury car and wish they had one. A wish is a goal without a plan. It is a source of pain because it highlights what is missing without providing a bridge to get there. The narrative describes the sensation of drifting without a clear goal. The struggling individual is like a ship without a rudder, pushed around by the currents of circumstance, the demands of others, and the winds of the economy. They end up wherever the current takes them, which is usually the rocks. The wealthy individual is a ship with a compass and an engine. They might face storms. They might be blown off course, but they are always moving toward a specific coordinate. The analysis reveals that the brain is a goal-seeking missile. If you do not give it a target, it will target problems, anxieties, and trivialities. When you give it a clear goal, the reticular activating system, ROS, in the brain switches on, filtering the world to find resources, people, and opportunities that match the goal. The intensity of the narrative builds as we approach the concept of the company you keep. Corley's research dropped a bombshell. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. The wealthy are ruthlessly selective about their social circle. 86% of the rich associate with other success-minded people. They cultivate what Corley calls rich relationships. These are not just transactional business contacts. These are relationships built on optimism, support, and shared ambition. The narrative depicts the mastermind dynamic, a group of people who lift each other up, who challenge each other to be better, who refuse to let each other settle for mediocrity. Contrast this with the toxic loyalty of the struggling group. They often cling to childhood friends, neighbors, or family members who are negative, pessimistic, or stagnant. They feel guilty for outgrowing their circle. They stay in environments where ambition is mocked and success is viewed with suspicion. Who do you think you are? The narrative describes the crab bucket effect. If one crab tries to crawl out of the bucket, the other crabs will pull it back down. The wealthy understand that negativity is contagious. It is a virus that infects the mind, breeding doubt and fear. They quarantine themselves from toxic people, just as they would quarantine themselves from a plague. They actively seek out mentors, coaches, and optimists. They understand that to fly with the eagles, you cannot scratch with the turkeys. The first part of our summary has laid the foundation of the individual self, the morning, the mind, the body, the goals, and the immediate circle. We have seen the stark contrast between the rich habits that build momentum and the poor habits that create friction. But the journey of transformation is not just about what you do when you are alone. It is about how you navigate the complex web of society, how you speak, how you think, and how you handle the inevitable failures that come with ambition. The narrative prepares to pivot from the internal habits of the self to the external habits of success, the art of communication, the power of positivity, and the specific financial behaviors that turn income into wealth. We are about to enter the psychology of the self-made mind, where we will discover that words have the power to program reality and that luck is not something you find, but something you make. The narrative shifts from the external world of social circles to the internal world of the tongue. We often think of language as a tool to describe reality, but Tom Corley's research reveals a more sensational truth. Language creates reality. The study uncovered a vocabulary of wealth and a vocabulary of poverty. Step into the conversation of the struggling individual. Listen closely. You will hear a symphony of limitations. I can't do that. That's impossible. I'm not smart enough. It's too risky. They got lucky. Life isn't fair. This is the language of the victim. It is a fatalistic script that programs the reticular activating system, ROS, to filter out opportunities and highlight obstacles. When a person says, I can't, the brain stops working. It shuts down the problem-solving centers because the decision has already been made. The struggle is reinforced by the very words used to describe it. Now, step into the conversation of the self-made millionaire. You will hear a different frequency. You rarely hear, I can't. Instead, you hear, how can I? This simple linguistic shift forces the brain to engage. It moves from a passive state of acceptance to an active state of inquiry. You hear words like opportunity, solution, learn, grow, and plan. Even when facing a disaster, the rich habit is to ask, what is the lesson here, rather than, why me? The narrative illustrates this as verbal alchemy. The wealthy understand that words are commands to the subconscious mind. If you tell yourself you are tired, you become tired. If you tell yourself you are capable, you become resourceful. Corley discovered that 6% of the wealthy gossip, compared to 60% of the poor. Gossip is the currency of the idle mind. It is a low-vibration activity that bonds people through shared judgment and negativity. The wealthy avoid it like a plague because it destroys trust. Instead, they engage in idea talk. They discuss concepts, strategies, and innovations. They understand that talking about people is small, talking about events is medium, talking about ideas is great. This mastery of language extends to the ratio of input versus output. The narrative introduces the 5-to-1 rule. In a conversation, the wealthy listen 5 minutes for every 1 minute they speak. We see the archetype of the wise listener versus the desperate talker. The struggling worker often talks incessantly about themselves, their problems, their opinions, and their past. They talk to validate their existence, to be heard in a world that ignores them. But in doing so, they learn nothing. They are broadcasting, not receiving. The wealthy individual, conversely, is a detective. They ask probing questions. How did you do that? What was your biggest challenge? What do you think about this trend? They understand that they already know what they know. the only way to grow is to learn what you know. By listening, they gather intelligence. They find the pain points of others, which are the seeds of business opportunities. They build empathy, which is the glue of relationships. The analysis here reveals that listening is a power move. It gives you the upper hand because you possess the information. The person talking is giving away their cards. The person listening is reading the table. As the narrative delves deeper into the unseen forces of success, it confronts the most controversial topic of all, luck. We are conditioned to believe that luck is a lightning strike, random, chaotic, and unfair. The poor look at the rich and say, they just got lucky. The rich look at the poor and say, they created their own bad luck. Corley's research deconstructs luck into 4 distinct types, creating a taxonomy of chance that is nothing short of revolutionary. First, there is random good luck. This is winning the lottery or inheriting a fortune. It is rare, less than 1% of the population, and completely out of your control. The poor obsess over this type, wasting money on tickets and energy on fantasies. The rich ignore it entirely. Second, there is random bad luck. This is getting hit by a drunk driver or having your house destroyed by a tornado. It is also rare and out of your control. The rich mitigate this with insurance and preparation, but they do not fear it. Third, there is opportunity luck. This is the luck of the self-made millionaire. It looks like luck to the outsider. Wow, he met the right investor at the right time, but it is actually the mathematical byproduct of rich habits. If you wake up early, read daily, network constantly, and pursue goals, you are spinning a web. Eventually, a lucky break will fly into that web. The narrative describes this as the law of probability. You cannot control when the coin lands on heads, but if you flip it 1,000 times a day, through habits, you will get more heads than the person who flips it once a year. Fourth, there is detrimental luck. This is the bad luck of the struggling individual. I lost my job, my car broke down, I got sick. But when you look closer, the job loss was due to poor performance, habit. The car broke down because of skipped maintenance, habit. And the illness was caused by poor diet, habit. The analysis is piercing. Most bad luck is simply the delayed consequence of bad habits. The wealthy create opportunity luck, the poor create detrimental luck. The narrative flow carries us to the shortcut. Is there a way to bypass the years of struggle? Is there a fast lane to the rich life? Corley found one: mentorship. The statistics are staggering. 93% of the self-made millionaires who had a mentor attributed their wealth directly to that mentor. 68% said that the mentor was the single most important factor in their success. Imagine a dense, dark forest. The struggling worker enters the forest alone, hacking away at the underbrush with a dull machete, getting lost, circling back, falling into pits, and exhausted by the effort. This is the school of hard knocks. It is noble, perhaps, but it is slow and painful. Now, imagine the wealthy individual. They stand at the edge of the forest and wait. They look for a guide, someone who has already crossed the forest, someone who has a map. They humble themselves and ask, "Will you show me the way?" The mentor says, "Don't go left, there is a swamp. Go right, there is a bridge." In 5 minutes, the mentored individual avoids 5 years of mistakes. The narrative illustrates the 3 types of mentors. 1. Career mentors. ***, the senior executive who guides you up the ladder. 2. Book mentors. ***, the authors, biographers, and thinkers whose wisdom you absorb, for those who cannot find a physical mentor. 3. Adversity mentors. ***, the harsh lessons of failure that, if reframed, teach you what not to do. The analysis reveals that the poor suffer from ego blockage. They are afraid to ask for help because they think it makes them look weak. The rich view asking for help as a sign of intelligence. They are success collectors, gathering wisdom from every source available to compress time. The story then pivots to the chemicals of success. We often think of attitude as a soft skill, nice to have. But Corley treats positivity as a biological imperative. He found that 54% of the wealthy are optimistic, compared to only 2% of the poor. This is not just about being happy, it is about brain function. The narrative takes us inside the prefrontal cortex, the CEO of the brain. This is where problem-solving, creativity, and strategic planning happen. Corley explains that negativity and chronic stress, the default state of the poor habits, flood the brain with cortisol and inhibit the prefrontal cortex. The brain literally shuts down its genius centers. The person enters survival mode, capable only of fight, flight, or freeze. They cannot see solutions because their biology blinds them. Optimism and gratitude, on the other hand, flood the brain with dopamine and serotonin. These neurotransmitters light up the prefrontal cortex. The optimist sees connections that the pessimist misses. They have more energy. They are more resilient. The narrative sensationalizes this. Optimism is a performance-enhancing drug. It is legal, free, and infinite. The rich choose to take this drug every day through gratitude journaling and positive affirmations. The poor choose the poison of complaint, which slowly atrophies their ability to solve their own problems. The intensity builds as we approach the pivot point. Every journey has a moment where the road ends. The bridge is out, and the storm rolls in. This is the moment of failure. Corley found that every single self-made millionaire faced massive failure. Bankruptcy, divorce, rejection, public humiliation. But the difference lay in the reaction. The struggling worker hits the wall and says, "See, I told you it wouldn't work. I'm not meant to be rich." They turn around and go back to the comfort of the known misery. The wealthy individual hits the wall and says, "This is data." They pivot. They persist. Corley found that 80% of the wealthy are focused on a single goal for at least 1 year. Often many more. They possess grit. The narrative recounts the story of the author himself, Tom Corley. He spent 5 years writing this book, analyzing the data, and trying to get published. He was rejected by agents. He was ignored by publishers. He could have quit and remained a regular accountant. But he applied the rich habit of persistence. He self-published. He marketed it door to door. He went on radio shows at 4 a.m. He pivoted until the wall cracked. The lesson is that persistence is the fee you pay for entrance into the 1%. It is the filter that keeps the non-committed out. As we transition to the financial mechanics, the narrative strips away the complexity of Wall Street and reveals the simple bucket system of the rich. We think rich people have complex investments. In reality, their secret is often boring, the 20% rule. The struggling worker follows Parkinson's law: expenses always rise to meet income. If they make $30, they spend $30. If they get a raise to $40, they buy a better car and spend $40. They are running on a treadmill where the speed increases every year. But they never move forward. The wealthy individual breaks this law. They save 20% of their gross income before they pay a single bill, buy a single grocer, or spend a dime on entertainment. They live on the remaining 80%. This 20% is not savings in the traditional sense, it is seeds. The narrative describes the buckets of wealth. 1. Retirement bucket. Asterisk 10% goes into long-term investments, 401k. IRAs, that grow with compound interest. This is the peace of mind bucket. 2. Specific expense bucket. Asterisk 10% goes into a fund for future needs, house, education, wedding. The other 80% is for life. The narrative highlights the psychological discipline required to live on 80%. It means driving a used car when you could afford a new one. It means cooking at home when you could eat out. It means saying no to the immediate pleasure for the sake of the future freedom. This is delayed gratification, the superpower of the affluent. But saving is only defense. The narrative shifts to offense. Multiple streams of income. Corley found that 65% of self-made millionaires had at least 3 streams of income before they made their first million. Reliance on a single paycheck is the definition of poverty risk. If that stream dries up, layoff, recession, illness, the person is destitute. The wealthy build a Parthenon, supported by many pillars. We see the archetype of the side hustler. They work their 9-to-5 job to pay the bills, but from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. and on weekends. They are building a side business. They are renting out a room. They are writing an ebook. They are teaching a course. They are fixing and flipping items. They understand that linear income, trading time for money, is limited. So they seek passive income, money working for them. The second part of our summary concludes with the realization that the rich life is not a destination you arrive at, it is a way of traveling. We have dissected the language of success, the architecture of luck, the necessity of mentors, the biology of optimism, the grit of persistence, and the mechanics of saving. But there is a final layer to uncover. How does one actually break the old habits and install the new ones? Habits are sticky. The brain resists change. The poor habits fight back with the ferocity of an addiction. The narrative prepares to enter the habit lab, where we will learn the specific protocols for rewiring the neural pathways, the time it takes to solidify a new behavior, and the ultimate vision of what a life transformed truly looks like. The glass wall is cracking. Today, more than ever, we are fighting a war against our own biology. The human brain is a marvel of evolution, but it has a fatal flaw when it comes to success. It is designed to be lazy. It seeks to conserve energy. It loves the path of least resistance. This is why bad habits are so sticky, they are easy. Eating junk food requires no effort, cooking a healthy meal does. Watching Netflix requires no effort, reading a complex book does. The brain, left to its own devices, will default to the poverty mode simply because it burns fewer calories. Tom Corley's research reveals that the battle for wealth is, at its core, a neurological trench warfare against the basal ganglia, the primitive part of the brain that controls automatic behaviors. To change your life, you must override this autopilot. You must wake up the prefrontal cortex and force it to take the wheel until the new behaviors become the new autopilot. This is the process of habit installation, and it is the most difficult, yet most rewarding, undertaking of a human life. The narrative transports us to the habit lab. The struggling worker tries to change everything at once. On January 1st, they vow to quit smoking, start running, read daily, and save money. By January 15th, they have crashed and burned. They are overwhelmed. The brain rebelled against the sudden shock. The wealthy individual uses a different strategy, the micro-habit evolution. They do not try to climb Everest in a day. They change one thing at a time. Corley found that it takes anywhere from 21 to 66 days to forge a new neural pathway. The narrative describes the 3 phases of habit formation. Phase 1, the unbearable, asterisk. The first 21 days are hell. The brain screams in protest. It feels unnatural, exhausting, and painful to wake up at 5 a.m. The gravity of the old self pulls with tremendous force. Most people quit here. The wealthy individual expects this pain. They embrace it as the tax of transformation. Phase 2, the uncomfortable, asterisk. The next 21 days are easier, but still require conscious effort. It is like driving a car in a foreign country. You have to think about every turn. You are not fighting gravity anymore, but you are still climbing uphill. Phase 3, the unstoppable, asterisk. After about 66 days, a miracle happens. The behavior moves from the prefrontal cortex, conscious effort, to the basal ganglia, automatic routine. Suddenly, it is harder not to do the habit than to do it. Waking up at 5 a.m. feels normal. Reading feels necessary. The struggle evaporates. The wealthy individual has successfully reprogrammed their biological software. The narrative introduces the tactical weapon used by the self-made millionaires to win this war, the Rich Habits Checklist. This is not a complex app or a fancy journal. It is a simple sheet of paper. On one side, the old you lists the bad habits, watched 3 hours of TV, ate fast food, procrastinated on project. On the other side, the new you lists the antidotes. Limit TV to 30 minutes. Ate 2,000 calories of healthy food. Completed 3 items on to-do list. Every day, the millionaire tracks their performance. They tick the boxes. This act of tracking creates accountability. You cannot lie to the checklist. If you see a row of unchecked boxes, you feel the sting of failure. If you see a streak of checks, you feel the dopamine rush of success. Corley found that this simple act of daily tracking increases the probability of success by over 200%. It turns the vague desire to be better into a binary game. Did you win the day? Or did you lose it? The analysis reveals the gamification of life. The wealthy treat their habits like a high-stakes game. They keep score. They compete against their yesterday. The struggling individual plays the game without a scoreboard, so they never know if they are winning or losing until it is too late. Bankruptcy, obesity, divorce. The checklist provides immediate feedback, allowing for course correction in real time. The story then pivots to the keystone habit. Corley discovered that not all habits are created equal. Some habits have a ripple effect that transforms everything else. The most powerful keystone habit is aerobic exercise. When a person starts running daily, something strange happens. They naturally start eating better because they don't want to ruin their run. They sleep better because they are physically tired. Their mood improves because of the endorphins. They become more disciplined in their work because they have conquered their body. One habit triggers a domino effect of positivity. The narrative contrasts this with the keystone bad habit of the struggling group, procrastination. When a person delays a task, stress builds up. To cope with the stress, they eat junk food. To numb the guilt, they watch TV. To avoid the morning reality, they stay up late. One bad decision triggers a cascade of failure. The wealthy identify their keystone habits and protect them at all costs. As the narrative deepens, it addresses the why. Willpower is a battery. It drains throughout the day. By 6 p.m., your willpower is at 0%. This is why diets fail at dinner time. To sustain the habits when willpower is gone, you need a nuclear power source. This source is purpose. Corley found that the self-made millionaires were driven by a clear, burning why. They weren't just saving money, they were saving for freedom. They weren't just working hard, they were building a legacy. The narrative describes the vision board of the mind. When the alarm goes off at 5 a.m. and the bed is warm, willpower says, sleep. But purpose says, get up. Your dream is waiting. The struggling individual lacks this why. They are working to pay bills, not to build a cathedral. Without a compelling vision of the future, the pain of the present is unbearable. The story moves to the social architecture of change. Changing habits is lonely. If you stop drinking, your drinking buddies will mock you. If you start reading, your TV-watching friends will call you boring. Corley advises the strategic disconnect. You must be willing to walk alone for a while. The narrative describes the phase of isolation. This is the cocoon phase. The caterpillar must disintegrate to become a butterfly. During this time, the wealthy individual seeks out new associations. They join a running club. They attend business seminars. They volunteer. They actively hunt for the new tribe that normalizes their new habits. They understand that normal is just an average of your environment. If you want to be wealthy, you must hang out where wealth is normal. The narrative intensity builds towards the tipping point. For years, the wealthy individual performs these habits with little visible result. They read, but they are not a genius yet. They save, but they are not rich yet. They run, but they are not an athlete yet. This is the valley of disappointment. The struggling worker looks at them and laughs. You work so hard, but you have nothing to show for it. But then, the law of compounding kicks in. Suddenly, the knowledge from the books connects to form a brilliant business idea. Suddenly, the savings compound into a down payment for an investment property. Suddenly, the network they built introduces them to a major client. The line on the graph goes vertical. The overnight success happens. But the narrative reveals the truth. It was not overnight. It was the explosive release of potential energy stored up by thousands of boring, daily, disciplined reps. The rich habits are the fuse, the wealth is the explosion. The story concludes with a vision of the self-made man, woman. They stand at the summit of their mountain, looking back at the valley. They see the glass wall that once separated them from this life. They realize the glass was never real. It was a mental construct built of fear, laziness, and ignorance. They realize that they did not find success. They became the kind of person that success is attracted to. They look at their hands. These hands built the habits. They look at their mind. This mind maintained the discipline. They look at their life. This life is the printed output of their daily routine. The narrative strips away the mystery. There is no secret society. There is no magic pill. There is only the ruthless, beautiful mathematics of behavior. If you input rich habits, the output must be wealth. If you input poor habits, the output must be poverty. The universe is a giant computer, and your habits are the code. The listener is left with a haunting question: if a forensic accountant looked at your daily calendar, would they predict you will be rich or poor? The wealthy individual does not leave this to chance. They audit their life. They prune the weeds. They water the flowers. They understand that a day is a miniature life. If you waste a day, you waste a life. If you master a day, you master destiny. Analyze the ultimate meaning that the book intends to convey. Change your habits. Change your life is a manifesto for behavioral engineering. Tom Corley's core message is that success is a process, not an event. It posits that we are not the victims of our circumstances, but the architects of our daily routines. The book serves as a source code for reprogramming the human operating system. It teaches that the gap between the rich and the poor is not a gap of ability, but a gap of daily practice. The final lesson is one of radical empowerment. You have the power to change your financial destiny, but you must first have the courage to change your daily existence. The climax of this journey leads to a state of automatic excellence. The seeker moves from being a slave to impulse to a master of routine. They realize that freedom is not doing whatever you want. Freedom is doing what you must do to achieve what you truly want. The journey ends with the quiet satisfaction of a box checked on a list. A small act that echoes into eternity. You are what you do repeatedly, therefore. Excellence is not an act, but a habit.